Hi, my name is Pip, and this is my review for Cassandra Clare's City of Bones, which is the first book in the Mortal Instruments series and a Shadowhunter book. Can we just start with how beautiful is this cover? It is absolutely gorgeous. This is the reason I picked up this book. I was so pissed off when they put a sticker on the back that ripped off the covering, because the covering is kind of papery. And this is why I picked up this book. This was really my first kind of experience or awareness of Cassandra Clare's work specifically. I had seen the Lily Collins movies Mortal Instruments, and so I was obviously vaguely aware of the Shadowhunters, but I hadn't actually read the books, seen the books anywhere. But that might just be because I'm such a book purchaser who purchases based on what catches my eye, and this is eye-catching. This book itself is really cool. This is, I think, the 10th anniversary edition, and it has all these illustrations inside, which is really cool. So you get to kind of get a visual idea of what the characters look like. I did predominantly actually listen as an audiobook. I didn't read the physical copy much. And that is just because of where I was with my life. So it was listening to it as I was walking the dog and doing things like that, rather than actually sitting down and reading the physical copy. As I listened to this book, I couldn't help but think there are kind of two kinds of YA. There's the kind that straddles new adult and has a bit more maturity to the story, and then there are the younger YAs. And I find that the latter tends to have a lot of descriptions that I personally find excessive. And they're often also unnecessary glamorizations of a person or a moment, or they just don't really gel with me. And I feel like City of Bones was that kind of book. There was definitely one specific moment I'm thinking about, even though this kind of thing was throughout the book. I mean, it doesn't stop my enjoyment of it, but it did make me go, oh god, this is a trope I loathe in YA books. It was when Magnus was scratching his head, and the description was that as he scratched his head, he was shedding glitter. And all I could think of was like, mate, get some Head and Shoulders, get that shit sorted. One of the reasons I don't like this kind of excessive description is because I find I lose track of the story and it takes me out of the flow of the story. Now, this might be because I am dyslexic, and one of the issues I had as a kid was sequencing. And I had to do a lot of work on that. And so when you read these books with these like mad descriptions, and that can be in any genre, like some people just have this beautiful lyrical way of writing and it's just so full of description, and I'm out. I can't do it. You've lost me. I don't know what you're talking about, and I've completely lost track of the story and lost interest in it. And I think that kind of happened to me in little patches with this book, but it wasn't so intensely done that it sort of ejected me from the story. It was just done to a point where I was like, what? You shedding glitter? Another example of when I kind of feel like you get lost and get taken out of the story would be when they're trying to find Simon the rat. And I'm going to try and keep the spoilers out of it, but they're trying to find Simon the rat, and this should be a high stakes, quick-paced section of the book. But instead, Clary gets distracted by Chairman Meow, and we get quite a description of Chairman Meow and what's going on. And then when we go back to worrying about Simon, I was like, oh yeah, Simon. So there were moments where I felt like the emotional punch that should have been there was diluted because we would get this either tangent or excessive description and not be dealing with the dire situation that was right in front of us. And it just, for me, it meant that what I personally would have found a more punchy book was kind of not really that punchy. That being said, I did enjoy the pacing of this book. Something I loved in this book was the kind of detailed world building and character development that had been done. The world building in particular I thought was pretty good. They had beautiful descriptions of the kind of complexities of this world, and it all made sense as much as any YA world makes sense. And it was really clearly well thought out, and you could really easily see how this would be the base book which a larger series could be created from, both with Clary and Jace and with other characters, because there was a richness to this world that had layers and was very detailed and well thought out. And I find that sometimes with YA books, what happens is you read the first book and there's a bit of world building and everything, and then you kind of want it to go in layers as you read on, but it's kind of almost like the subsequent books explain the first book in a way that makes it clear that the author hadn't really thought out the world building and the magic system and all of those sorts of things prior to going into the subsequent books. And I don't feel like that happened here. I feel like the world was really well thought out, the magic system was well thought out, the rules were defined. I thought that was done really well. I would actually be interested in trying to read this book. I think that sometimes narrators of audiobooks can complicate things. So there were times that I felt like the narrator kind of heightened the emotional immaturity of some of the characters, particularly Clary, and I just wonder if that was a true depiction of Clary, or if this is kind of one of those instances where the audiobook makes something a little bit more annoying. So I did feel like the emotional immaturity of particularly Clary, but also Jace, was really emphasized by the audiobook. Also Isabel. Isabel I found quite irritating, but I don't know if that's the way it is. So I think when I continue the series, and I do want to continue the series, I will do so with the physical copy and sort of steer away from the audiobook and see if that changes how I feel about Clary and Jace and Isabel. And I was in the secondhand bookstore yesterday and picked up what I thought was the next 3 books in the series, and it turns out that I'm a total dumbass who bought 2 of the same books. So there's that. This is pretty cool to have this in a book. I mean, I would love to have that sort of thing in my book. It's just that, like, it's expensive enough to publish without commissioning artwork and then without finding a way to include that artwork in your book, but one day. There is a scene where they capture the Mortal Cup, and it kind of encapsulates everything I did and did not like about this book. I liked that Clary was new to this world, and that meant that she didn't know everything all of a sudden, that she didn't spontaneously know how to fix everything because she's the chosen one and she had to acquire some skill. But I liked that she wasn't entirely useless. She was definitely being guided by instinct and suppressed memories, which I enjoyed. I didn't like that it took so long for them to make like a banana and split. Things were going wrong, they were having massive issues, and they just hung about instead of making a major attempt to escape. This also happened when they were trying to rescue Simon, and Clary and Jace were having a lot of banter back and forth, and I was like, dude, the vampires are distracted, get out of there. But back to the scene where they capture the Mortal Cup. I couldn't understand why they were telling Dorothy everything. There's no need for her to know everything. And this, I feel, is kind of a very common trope of YA novels. You tell someone who doesn't need to know everything, and it kind of allows a trap to be created. I feel like there's better ways to trap your characters. It just feels weird to have your character have verbal diarrhea to someone who doesn't need to know stuff and who you don't really have necessarily a lot of trust that they should or could protect this information that you're giving them. And I know that sometimes you have to have your characters divulge via dialogue a lot of information, because there's not always a beautiful way to show without telling information that you need the reader to have. But I just kind of feel like you end up with, in a lot of YA books, with this kind of situation where it's almost like the bad guys are narrating it. I'm going to stab you in the face now. Oh no, what will I do? Well, I'm coming. I'm going to stab you in the face now. Oh dear, I guess I could shield my face. So telling Dorothea everything didn't make any sense to me, but I guess humans aren't logical and we don't always do the thing that makes sense. The other shadow hunters didn't seem to have the same instinct and skill as Jace, and I completely understand that as an author, Cassandra Clare is trying to make Jace stand out. But the thing I didn't like about that is how ineffectual the other shadow hunters then looked. And Alec is kind of an example of this. He just seemed incapacitated by love or fear, and then all of a sudden he acted. And I mean, Isabel the same. Like, the epilogue seemed to serve as an explanation for where she had been during major turns of events, and she had just like, oh hey guys, I'm back. And I know I've gone on about 57 tangents, but the final thing I didn't like from the scene about where they captured the Mortal Cup is that the demon explained everything about himself and who he was. Like, I'm the demon, I've come to kill you, you will never kill me, kiss my ass. There was one thing I consistently loved through this book and even in this one scene, and that was the chemistry between Clary and Jace, their dialogue with each other, their banter back and forth. Loved it. So this scene, or a couple of chapters, whatever it was, kind of captured everything that I felt about this book. There were things that I didn't like that I felt were over-explained or just kind of lacked the oomph that they should have had, and things that didn't make sense to me, like, why aren't you trying to get out of there? And then there were things that I really loved, like Clary and Jace and the characters in this book. And overall, I enjoyed this book. The chemistry between Clary and Jace and Jace's wit and just their general banter was 100% my favorite thing in this book. I could totally see that if I was reading this book as a teenager when we got to Clary's birthday scene, that I would have been like, kiss, 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 kiss. I did find that sometimes this book was overly dramatic and sometimes Clary was a bit dense. Like, how long does it take you to work out who your father is? Only everybody is doing everything but saying it, and you can't work that out. But then she's super quick about working out Renwick Island. It just felt a little inconsistent, but the times when she was dense, like about who her dad is, was just... That being said, I can see that that's an aspect of being a 15-year-old. You think you're smart at the time, but God, when you look back, you're fucking stupid. And Cassandra Clare has really nailed the righteousness you can find in some teenagers. Really nailed it. The book is way better than the movie, that goes without saying. Especially because in the movie, Lily Collins is completely useless. She basically just stands around looking shocked, crying or screaming and not really contributing anything. It's a little bit like how I felt about the Harry Potter movies, which I watched in a bizarre order. I started with the last one, and that was my first experience in the Harry Potter world. But Harry never seemed to achieve anything much in the books. It all seemed to be driven by Hermione, and I was kind of like, what's the importance of Harry? And then I haven't read the first 4 books. I've only read the last 3, however many there are. I've only read Order of the Phoenix, the Prince one, and the Deathly Hallows. And I can see in the books that Harry is much more useful. He has a lot of emotional stuff that he goes through, and he has a lot of epiphanies as well. They're not just all Hermione's. So sometimes I think movies can be 100% guilty of biasing you to thinking that a character is more useless than they actually are, especially if you, like I did in this case, watched the movie first and then read the book. And I do wonder if that colored how I felt about Clary, that I went in thinking she was a little bit more like not the strong female lead that I would love to see in this kind of book. I don't actually like doing this. I don't like reviewing books that are in the same genre I write in, but it doesn't make sense not to, but it just feels a little bit shady. So I am a little bit uncomfortable doing this, but in the same breath, I read this book, so I'm going to review it. It's interesting as you read YA books to see which tropes that are common in YA get plucked and put into each book, and it does seem to be quite different. This book did have a lot of the bad guy explaining what he's going to do prior to him doing it kind of trope, which I'm not a fan of, and the bad guy monologue, also not a fan. But it did have a lot of things I liked in it, but I did find at times it was overly dramatic and melodramatic, and I don't know, maybe that's just because I'm like nearly 60,000 years old and I'm reading a book that was probably designed for like 15 and 16-year-olds. And maybe I'm just jaded as fuck because of what I've been through recently, but I don't know. I guess it's kind of normal that even if you're reading a bunch of YA books and that's the genre that you write in, that you're going to come away feeling a bit neutral about some books, and that's okay. I am yet to read a YA book that has me just like, yes, this is the best thing ever. There are always tropes that I kind of find infuriating with YA, and I'm sure that there are plenty of people who feel neutral or negatively about my books, just like I'm sure there are also people who have enjoyed them. But it's just kind of one of those things that I don't know if I feel that way about YA because I'm in general not a fan of the tropes that are common, or because I'm 500 years old reading books that are designed for people who are 18 and under, or if it's because I'm just looking for something that hasn't been written yet. The final issue that I had with this book, and then I swear I'm done. I loved Jace, loved him the whole way through, except at the end when Valentine came into the picture and his relationship with Valentine was kind of explored. And I'm trying to keep this spoiler free, but the way Jace just kind of accepted blindly what Valentine was saying didn't feel consistent to me, when he has been such an intuitive character and such seemed to have like such a good bullshit radar previously in the book, and then he felt betrayed by Clary's mother, and then he switched and felt betrayed by Clarentine. I just felt like I had whiplash, and I felt like this was kind of unnecessary and dragged out over a number of I think it was over a number of chapters, but it was dragged out over a really long time to kind of create unnecessary drama, which again is something that I find that YA books can be a bit guilty of. And it's not something that I'm a massive fan of, particularly when you get that emotional whiplash happening. And yeah, I don't know. It didn't feel necessary in the end, because it's like, this is who Jace thought he was, and then this is who he actually is, and we come back around and pretty much end up in the same spot. And then kind of Clary and Jace think briefly that they're related to each other, and so that kind of cools the sexual chemistry between them. But I don't know about you, if I thought even for 5 minutes that I might be legitimately related to someone I was sexually attracted to, it would take a long time and a DNA test for me to get over that. And they just seem to move on. What I hope to find from the next Shadowhunter books is that there's a little bit less of the monologue of the bad guy. I don't want to be going from kiss, kiss, kiss to would you just friggin' kill him already, like I was with this book a little bit. I would love to explore more of the magic system because that was really, really interesting and really well done. I hope that Clare and Jace can get their DNA test because I like that dynamic and I hope to see more of it. I would like to see Isabel mature and harden up a little bit. I know that they're only teenagers, but still. I also feel like Jocelyn's got some splaining to do, so I would like to see that happen in the next couple of books. I don't know what the next couple of books hold. I haven't researched it. I haven't looked ahead. I haven't read any reviews for it, so I got no idea. So hopefully I'll be pleasantly surprised, and hopefully you have enjoyed my review of The City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. Let me know below in the comments what you thought of it, whether you loved all the things that I hated and think I'm insane, or whether you agree with me. Don't forget to like this video and to subscribe to my channel. You can also check me out. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at @PipCoombs.